Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
I want to first thank Father Sandy and his gracious staff and all the people that of Holy Communion that have made this trip so special for us. The hospitality here at this parish is abounding, and I'm sure that as a result of this hospitality, this parish is going to continue to grow and thrive and really be a message for God's Word. Message for God's Word. So thank you all for being here. Thank you for having me, and thank you for allowing me to bring my lovely wife, Dana Cole. We just celebrated 25 years of holy matrimony this summer, and we are just so happy to be with you all. So let's start with prayer. Heavenly Father, Almighty God, send your Spirit among us. Help us to think in ways that we've never thought before. Help us to think of a way of change, and a change to be closer to you, to know your will better and better each day of our lives. Amen. I'm going to talk about something today that we never talk about in the Episcopal Church. We never talk about this because we don't understand what it is. We don't know what it is. We've heard stories about it. We've seen movies, we've read literature about it, and it's all caught up in this Victorian sort of mindset we've had that goes back hundreds and hundreds of years, and we don't understand it. So what do? We don't talk about it. We don't talk about it. And what is that word? Don't start throwing anything at me yet. Give me a chance. And I know what I know I'm in an Episcopal church. You know why? The front pews are all empty. Right. Everyone's in back having their coffee. Everyone's getting the muffins. Well, I'm walking around today, so you're not going to get away from me. You're not going to get away. I'm here. And I'm going to talk about this sin thing that we don't like. What is sin? Sin is something that, if we read in books, it's about, having that extra Jack Daniels on Saturday night. I was out there dancing up a storm. People didn't like that. I was swearing on the golf course. I hit that ball, shanked it, and I went, that's sin. That's what we think is sin. That's not sin. Sin, by definition, theologically, sin is when we separate from God. We separate from God. And sure, drinking and dancing and swearing, doing all those sort of things could result in sin because we may feel guilty, we don't feel good about ourselves, we don't feel confident, we don't feel we're acting in God's will, and we are separated from God. And that's the definition of sin. So what I'm going to invite each of you to do today is to get away from this idea of, storybooks, if I drank too much, I danced too much, I must be in sin. At the end of today's session, I want you to go home, and if there's something you can reflect upon, it's to take a spiritual inventory. Reflect upon your lives. Take a spiritual inventory as to what is going on in your life that is separating you from God. And maybe it's not the donuts. Maybe it's not the donuts. Maybe it's something, and no one's going to like this. Put your seatbelts on, we're on for a ride. Maybe it's something like this. Did you ever think about that? I'm going to go back to 1978. I was a senior at Tulane University. I was an English major. And I love the South. By the way, I love coming down here to Memphis yesterday. And what do you think my first stop off yesterday when I got here was? Barbecue. Barbecue, exactly. I went to Father Sandy and I said, "Where's the best barbecue?" And I was transported, very lovely, thank you, Father, thank you, right to Central Barbecue, right near Sandy's house. And I sat down, and my wife sat down. It was 11:30 in the morning, and the place was packed. Do you people have ribs for breakfast? I mean, what's going on down here? But anyway, I loved it. So I don't want to digress here. Let me go back to Tulane in 1978. And I'm having a conversation with my mother. And my mother, God rest her soul, had a hard life. She had a hard life. Her mother was clinically depressed, went through terrible shock treatments during the 1920s and 30s. The way we treated people with depression is with electricity. Electricity. And she saw her mother day after day get deeper and deeper into depression, and she was just never the same, even with all the treatments. And much of that was because she had been told that her husband was dying of cancer. He was dying of cancer. He was 35 years old, and he had stomach cancer, and he was going to die, and she went into depression. That was my grandfather. Well, my grandfather lived to 87 years old. He outlived the doctor. But my grandmother was a casualty. And that depression really made an influence. It really influenced my mother's life. The other part was that she was a depression baby. You know, we sort of don't remember what the depression was like, but I remember hearing stories of my grandfather, who was an insurance salesman, who would go out, and they called them dime men, where they'd go from door to door and they'd ring doorbells and they'd say they collect premiums by getting 10 cents. And it would be raining outside. And he used to tell me that he had holes in his shoes, and he had to put newspapers in his shoes to keep the water out because he couldn't afford a new pair of shoes. And when his boss, if he tried to get in from the rain and went to his boss and said, "You know, it's too foul outside, it's raining," his boss wasn't too happy about it. He says, "Get out there, I don't care." So this is what my mother grew up in. And so when I was telling her, here I was, a liberal arts major, I was an English major, a violin minor, I was an actor. Can you tell that already? Can you tell that? They're little touchstones in our lives. These are little touchstones, right? I was an actor, and my mother was scared to death. She said, "Oh my God, my son's going to be this actor, unemployed actor, or he's going to be playing for spaghetti dinners, O Solo Mio somewhere." I said, "Oh my God, this is a catastrophe." And I said to my mother, I said, "Well, you know, I love English literature, Blake, Wordsworth, Coleridge, Byron, Shelley, Keats. I love it. The English department, Mom, has invited me to stay on to get my master's to teach English here at Tulane University. What do you think about that?" There was silence. There was more silence. And then finally she said, "Robert, everyone in the world calls me Bob. My parents always called me Robert." I said, "Robert, that's not for you. You're never going to be happy. You have to make a living. You need money." Now, she had a lot of goodness of heart. She wasn't trying to wreck my life. She was just trying to feed me the facts of life. She was trying to explain to me that in her experience, you know, kumbaya was nice, but a nice rib steak on the table is a little nicer sometimes, right? Right? She was trying to explain to me the facts of life, trying to explain to me that you're going to have to balance your checkbook. And let me say, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not one of these people that are going to tell you that, you know, filthy lucre or anything like that. Nope. But what I'm looking at here is what the balance of life is. And what do you do towards that end that separates you from God. Separates you from God. So I said to Mom, and she said, well, look, you're kind of an actor. You're good in front of people. You like to do things like that. Why don't you become a lawyer? Her idea, Mom's idea. My brother was a doctor, right? After all, well, she had a doctor in the family. My father was a doctor. My brother was a doctor. My sister was a nurse. She should have been a doctor, lawyer, Indian chief. Maybe she should have been an Indian chief to fill in that spot, right? But she said, be a lawyer. I said, all right. So Bob Zito goes to law school, perhaps the 3 worst years of my life. How many lawyers we got out here? I met some lawyers. Will you agree with me? Did you love law school? Do you look back at law school and say, gee, wasn't that fun? I enjoyed everybody stabbing me in the back. I loved it when those professors would force me to stand up and make a fool out of myself and recite a case. I loved it. Law school was great. No one likes law school. But I got through. I passed the bar exam. I got to a nice firm on Fifth Avenue in New York City. And the next thing I know it, I'm getting to the office at 7 o'clock in the morning, leaving at 8, 9, 10 o'clock at night. Eventually, I get put on the Penwalt takeover case in the 1980s. The Penwalt takeover case. Anyone remember Penwalt? That company? Yeah, okay. I don't think they're around anymore. They're long merged out or consolidated into something else. So I get to work on this lovely Penwalt, and I'm actually the lead litigator. I'm a fairly senior associate. I'm a litigator, and I'm working pretty hard. In fact, I work. Bless you, dear. Bless you. I've had the same cold. I get that. And I'm working 4 months straight. 4 months straight without a day off. And I worked full days, 12-hour days, Saturdays and Sundays. Believe it or not, I wasn't, don't tell my bishop this, but I wasn't going to church in those days. Right? I was working on Sundays. I was worshiping at the altar of the dollar. And I was getting paid a lot of money, especially for a young guy. Fast forward, 2002. I was asked to try the Real Estate Associates class action case. And if there's anything I stand for, I actually am one of the few lawyers who have ever tried a securities class action case under Section 14 of the 34 Act for you securities lawyers out there, and to have tried that to verdict. Very few of these cases get to verdict for a variety of reasons, and I'm happy to talk to you afterwards about why that doesn't happen. But I was asked to try that case. And I had to assemble a trial team. And I put together a bunch of lawyers, and everyone fell apart. I had to relocate to California, Los Angeles. I hadn't seen my lovely wife, Dana, in 4 months, right? She came out once for a weekend, and I said, I can fit you in between 2 and 3, and I got to get back to preparing for this examination of this witness, right? 4 months in California, Los Angeles, West Hollywood, ooh, wasn't the greatest place. And again, working around the clock. And then, with all the preparation, I'll never forget this. With all the preparation, our main witness, our client, his name was Alan Kasdan. We had every major law firm in Los Angeles working with him to prepare his testimony. And we were all ready for Alan. Alan was ready. He got up there, had his blue suit on, his white shirt, red tie. He looked terrific, right? And we're all sitting there and said, they're not going to lay a glove on this guy. He takes the stand, and the first question that the plaintiff's lawyers ask is, Mr. Kasdan, here's a copy of the proxy statement. Now, this was a case all about the proxy statement, fraud in the proxy statements. And they say, well, Mr. Kasdan, I'll refer your attention to page 2 of Exhibit 3498. A lot of paper in this case. I'll refer your attention to page 2 of the exhibit. Is that your signature? You know, just sort of a introductory question, get the ball rolling. Is that your signature? Mr. Kasdan looks down, puts on his reading glasses, takes them out, looks at his reading glasses, flips through the document. I don't know why he's flipping through the document. And he looks at the page, he takes off his glasses, and he says, "No, sir, I don't think that is my signature." Of course it was his signature. I mean, he signed 1,000,000 of these. I mean, this was his signature. And we didn't even think to prepare him for this kind of a question, right? The man knows his signature, right? What, the elves came in the middle of the night, signed his name? I mean, what was he thinking? And he signed that. Well, let me tell you, that was the best part of his testimony. Right? It went down all through there. Now, understand something. Mr. Kasdan is an immeasurably wealthy guy. All right? Immeasurably wealthy guy. That's hard enough in the courtroom for all you who know that, right? And when his testimony was over at the break, you know, there's a certain protocol in a courtroom that when the judge retires first. It's all rise, like you see on TV, all rise, everyone stands up. The judge retires, takes off from the bench first. And then the jury retires. Well, Mr. Kasdan apparently thought that he was better than the jury. So all rise, out goes the judge, and then Mr. Kasdan hops off the chair, hops off, goes to talk to his buddies in the front row. And when he's walking through the well of the courtroom, just like that, yeah, like that, the jurors are looking at him like this, like. And I saw this, and I said, oh my God, this is going to be a disaster. And by the way, we spent a lot of money on a mock trial trying to figure out whether or not we would win or lose. And all the jury consultants told us we had a winner. We were going to win. And that's why we tried the case. Well, they hadn't met Mr. Kasdan. So Mr. Kasdan walks out, and we start preparing for what we should do. And so, make a long story short, verdict came in. Guess what? We didn't win the case. Well, those are the kinds of things that started having me start to think a little bit about this sin thing. Did I feel close to God in that courtroom? Not really. Did I feel close to God being with Mr. Kasdan day in and day out? Certainly not. Certainly not. And I found that all my life energy was being spent on being with people, looking at people as a way to make a living. And it wasn't good. It wasn't good. And it was all about, you know, trying to make money and trying to say, well, I like my lifestyle. I'm a member of all these clubs. I've got a posh Manhattan apartment. I like it. These are all good things, good things. Well, about 5 years ago, the rector of Trinity Parish started setting out the words. I was the parish deacon at Trinity Parish for about 8 years in Manhattan, you know, at the head or the foot of Wall Street, depending on where you look at it, all right? And one morning, I'm walking around, and I'm putting on my alb and my Dalmatic. Trinity has no shortage of vestments there, and going back hundreds of years. And all of a sudden, someone comes running up to us. The rector would like to speak with you. I said, what? They said, no, the rector really needs to speak with you. So I said, all right, where is he? I'm trying to find Bill, and all of a sudden I see Bill. He's looking around, he says, I don't know what that means. He says, come on. He takes me into the bathroom in the sacristy. And I'm saying, whoa. You know, God picks the weirdest places to get holy. You know, God picks the weirdest places. I'm sure Moses, when he went up to the mountainside and said, Going up to the mountain? I mean, come on, it's cold up here, right? In the bathroom, Bill turns to me and says, I would love it if you would consider being the first general counsel of Trinity Parish. I don't know what to say. In the bathroom, in the sacristy. And I said, Bill, that sounds wonderful. I would love to get involved in that. Make a long story short, the rector wanted me, the search committee didn't. I didn't get the job. Then I got a call from somebody saying, Bob, I think that you would be the best chief legal officer of the Episcopal Church, 815 2nd Avenue, right? And I decided, okay, well, all right, I'll put my name in there. And while I'm interviewing for that position, and I'm going through a sea change of thinking, I'm saying, how am I going to, I was a Wall Street lawyer for 35 years. I hate to say it, but I made a pretty good living. And when they started telling me how much 501c3 lawyers make, I'm saying, really? Really? And I said, well, okay, let God do the work. Let God do the work. And as I'm interviewing for the chief legal officer position of the Episcopal Church, I'm also talking to a colleague of mine at my law firm, and I say to her, one of these days, I'm going to just hang it up from the practice. The practice is just going to be way too much for me. Way too much for me. I'm going to hang it up. I got it. I'll just go to the mountainside and I'll teach like Jesus. I'll teach law, something like that. She turns to me and she says, Marist College is looking for a business law professor for their business school. But I think they've already hired somebody, and I don't know. But you could think about it. I just heard about it. So I get home, I get on the computer, and sure enough, I see faculty positions available. Assistant Associate Professor of Law, Marist College. I whip up a resume, a cover letter, I get right on there. I put it in there and I'm saying, hey, it's near my house. Marist College is 30 minutes away from I have a country house up in New Paltz, where is my weekend getaway. And I said, yeah, maybe I can get an adjunct position, teach a course on Friday, and then I've got a reason to tell my partners that I have to leave early. I'm teaching, got to leave early, right? So I had this all schemed out like a lawyer usually does. So I put in the papers, and all of a sudden I get a call from a professor who's on the search committee, and he interviews me over the telephone. He starts to tell me that he was a partner at PwC, PricewaterhouseCoopers, for about 30 years, and decided to retire from the practice and went into teaching, and he's loved it. He passes me on to the next guy. He said, we need people like you. I get a call from the associate dean. He practiced law for 25 years, then went on, got a PhD in education, in management, business management, and he said, I love teaching. It's great. He passes me on. I said, wait a minute, this is happening all in a week. Then I get to the dean himself, and I say to the dean, and he's starting to say, look, Bob, we want you to come up and spend a full day with us. We want you to present and defend a research project, just like you would in like you see on TV. You get grilled from colleagues about your research project. And then we would like to see you teach a course. Come on up and teach a class for us. We'd like to observe you. So I said, okay. So I said to the professor, the dean actually, I said, do I have a shot at this? I'm thinking adjunct, right? Do I have a shot at this? And he said, Bob, I'm glad you're telling me that. So I'm glad you're being very candid with me because quite frankly, I don't know how the hell you got this far. Since you've never taught before. He's kind of saying, like, what are you thinking? What are you thinking? So, okay, so I've got an appointment set up where I'm going to teach, I'm going to defend this thing, my research project, and then I'm going back for the near final rounds for the position of chief legal counsel at the Episcopal Church. And this is the wildness. I'm leaving the second set of interviews. I'm in the elevator at 909 3rd Avenue, and you ever see these elevators now? They have like TV screens in there now, right? TV screens. You can't just do anything. You need some stimulation. We don't have enough stimulation. So I'm in the elevator, and I'm writing down, and I'm thinking about, oh my God, what's this all about? The chief legal officer. And I see the video, and what do you think is on the video? An ad for Marist College. The bloody Holy Spirit is in the elevator with me. Marist, Bob, Marist College. I had never seen an ad for Marist College before that time, and I've never seen the Marist College ad after that time. I don't think it exists. This is a burning bush moment. I'm taking off my shoes maybe, right? But I said to myself, be prayerful. Be prayerful. And I was very prayerful. I never prayed so hard in all my life, asking God, where do you want me? Send me out, Lord. Where do you want me? The Friday before Memorial Day, I get a call from Dean Singleton. Dean Singleton said, Bob, I don't know what the heck you did when you came up to visit us, but you knocked it out of the ballpark. Knocked it out of the ballpark. I didn't get one negative comment about you. I want to offer you a job. Full-time faculty, assistant professor of business law at Marist College. Welcome to the family. He could barely get the sentence out before I said yes. I immediately told my law partners, I'm leaving the practice. They all looked at me, scoffing. What are you kidding? How are you going to live on a professor's salary? Ha ha ha. Right? Put my apartment up to sale. Still hasn't sold yet. God will provide. There are a lot of godly real estate brokers out there I've got faith in, right? And I left all of New York City to travel up to live full-time in my New Paltz house and to teach at Marist College. And I started just this semester. And I will say that I've never, ever, ever been happier. Never been happier. I love my students. I have about 75 students this semester. I love the faculty members. I love the culture. There is nothing I enjoy more than Marist College. And I just want to read something for you. One of my students was asked to single out someone at the college that was meaningful to them in their lives. And she chose me. And she's a volleyball player, and they had a faculty appreciation night, and she wrote this about me. I get choked up every time I read it. I've had the privilege of having Professor Zito this semester for Legal Foundations of Business. I was a little nervous going into this course, as law is a new topic for me, but Professor's teaching styles have not only kept me entertained in the classroom, but also prepared me for my future in the business and paralegal fields. Professor Zito somehow always comes up with random case scenarios off the top of his head that always relate exactly to every topic discussed in that class's chapter and that are extremely helpful in learning and retaining all the lecture material. He also never fails to crack a few jokes to keep the class entertained and engaged in his lesson. His knowledge in the course is unbelievable and extremely helpful for answering any student's questions in class and having to do with my potential future in the legal field. Thank you, Professor Zito, for all your time and dedication in the classroom to help me excel as a student athlete at Marist. And that is worth all of these in the world. So I close by inviting you to examine some change in your life. Examine change. You're never too old, and wherever you are in life, you're never that far from some epiphany that will bring you closer to God. I was going across the internet today, and I read a very interesting fact about eagles. And I didn't know this. Eagles live the longest of their species. They live to 70 years old. But they have a problem. When they get to about middle age, when they get to about 40, their beaks turn soft, and their talons grow soft. And what happens is that they can no longer hunt. And they've got a choice. Either they die, or they go to a mountain somewhere, and they have to knock off their beaks to have a new, strong one grown, and they chop off their talons and have new ones grow so they can live another 20, 30 years. The point being that change is never, ever not without pain. It's painful. Richard Rohr is a great spiritualist. He's a Franciscan priest. He's written this book called Falling Upward. And it's all about before you can really grow into your true self. There are two halves in life, sort of the first half and then the other half. And the other half is when you really, really start to live. But you have to have a falling of sorts. And a lot of us are afraid to give up the things that are familiar to us. And I hate to say it, a lot of it is connected to money. A lot of it is connected to money. So think about that. When you leave here today, think about where your life is leading. What are the things in life that separate you from God? What are the things that grow you nearer to God? And I suggest that you might want to choose the other. Don't be afraid of change, because God is with you the whole way along. Thank you, everybody.
Where did you grow up?
The question is, where did I grow up? I grew up in Long Island, New York, in Huntington, Long Island, and I went to high school there, went to Tulane, and I came back to New York City to go to law school, and I spent the rest of my life in New York City. Yes, ma'am? What's the draw? The question is, what is my call to the diaconate? What drew me to that? Well, I think anyone that has ever had a call knows that God is a pain in the neck, right? And it's that sort of the tugging at the sleeve. And I knew that God wanted me to do something. I didn't know what it was. And we all have calls. And let me emphasize that. We all have calls. If we're believers, as Christians, we're believers in a divine plan. And the question is just trying to discern what that call is. What's right for us? What does God want us to do? And that's how we become aligned with God. Well, I had expressed an interest in ordained ministry. And when I started going through the ordination process, people wanted me to become a priest. And I shunned that. And everyone said, well, maybe you should be a deacon. I said, well, the idea of being a deacon, as opposed to being a priest, is being able to have one foot in the world and 1 foot in the church. 1 foot in the world, you're straddling that threshold. And I like that. I don't think I was called to parochial ministry. I love to talk, but there are people much holier than I am, such as Sandy and
Keep talking about it.
Yeah. I mean, these guys walk into a room and they're brilliant. There's light coming through here, and I said, I love priests, and they always try and put an arm around me and say, Bob, join the fraternity. But I just never had that call. I love ordained ministry. I love my parochial ministry. I love teaching. I mean, my ministry at Trinity Church was teaching adults in inquirers classes, much the way we're doing here today. And I feel that I've always was called to be a teacher. Someone asked me before today, well, how would your life have been any different if you had started teaching right after college? And, my response to that is, I don't know. God has a way. And I wouldn't be the teacher that I am today if I had started teaching back in my 20s. And I feel like I'm making up for lost time. But maybe that's God's will. Maybe that's God's will. I hope that answers your question. Thank you, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Well, come on up here, dear. Come on, love. Come on. Come on. She blushes easily. This is my beloved, Dana Cole. She works in the publishing business. We don't have any children, but we've had tons of dogs over the years. We are wholly unable to do anything on our own. We do everything together, whether it's shopping for groceries or playing tennis. She's my favorite tennis partner because she lets me beat her. But but we have fun. We have a lot of fun. And this too was an act of God. We met each other in January of 1992. Dana decided to propose to me in March of 1992. That's another hour. And we got married on July 4th, 1992, and joyfully celebrated our 25th wedding anniversary this year. And we love it. Thank you. A blessing from God. Thank you. Yes, sir. I was scared to death. Teachers don't get paid much. Teachers don't get paid much. And in fact, I'm getting paid less than what secretaries get paid at my Wall Street law firm. I don't know why that is. When yes, athletes and superstars on the screen get paid a tremendous amount. We don't pay teachers anything. And I was deathly afraid as to whether I could make ends meet. And I still am, by the way. I mean, I've had to borrow money off of my HELOC, my home equity loan, in order to carry the apartment in the city until it sells. And I don't like doing that. I'm debt adverse. But I was scared then, and I'm scared now, but I live in the faith that's all going to work out. It's all going to work out. I hope that answers your question. Good. Yes, sir.
So suppose that for folks who are sort of in between that space?
Oh, absolutely. Great question. Thank you for that. I think that there are different seasons in life. There are different seasons in life, and there are different seasons for different people. And I think when I was in my 30s, an Episcopal priest was really urging me to go to seminary and to do that. And I always felt caught to the fact that I was making a good living, I had a great lifestyle. And I think that when you're thinking about what direction your life is taking you, Joseph Campbell was a great professor. He taught at Sarah Lawrence, who's a professor of philosophy there. He recently died. He did a great show on Channel 13. I don't know if you saw it, with Bill Moyer. And he had a great expression, which I will commend to you, and that is, follow your bliss. Follow your bliss. And the problems that we have with society is that we equate balancing that checkbook, living a nice lifestyle, a good lifestyle, with bliss. And what you have to do in order to maintain that lifestyle sometimes isn't worth it. And I think that I questioned it. Quite frankly. I didn't have the courage, Sandy. I didn't have the courage to do what I did today. And I might also add that I didn't have the bank book then that I have today. So it's a blend of a lot of circumstances that only God understands. But the point of that is that we always have to keep listening, because God, the hound of heaven, never gives up on us. God is always telling us what to do. We're just not listening, right? We don't listen. So we have to keep listening. Continue being prayerful. Continue going to Holy Communion Church, listening to the rector in his sermons, right? I expect my check later, by the way. Do I get a tenth of every new parishioner? Or? I believe in tithing. Anyway, I hope that, Sandy, I hope that answers your question. Anything else?
Can you tell us about Marist a little bit?
Marist College is it's a small liberal arts college. It's a regional college with about 6,500 students. It was started in the 1920s by the Marist brothers, which was a Roman Catholic order, religious order, monks. And actually the school in Poughkeepsie, which is right on the Hudson River with the foliage this time of year, it's just gorgeous. But this was a seminary. Marist College was originally started as a seminary to train Marist brothers, which had have a teaching ministry. That was their ministry, to teach. And so you had all these brothers and priests who were being trained there. The motto is orare et labore, which is pray and work, pray and work. Orare et labore. So it's a holy place. They've got a chapel right there on campus. And what really did it for me is when the chair of my department said that when she was offered the position, she was so taken by the atmosphere at Marist College that she spent the last 2 hours of her day at Marist in the chapel praying. It's a holy place. Yes, ma'am. The question is, are there any more changes in my life? Well, as a result of this decision. Well, I will tell you, my anxiety level is way down. When I was trying cases, I had to be medicated sometimes because of anxiousness and anxiety. You know, I have no need for that kind of medication anymore. And I get up every morning, I walk in my front door, and I hear the owls or someone making a commotion. I've got lovely wild turkeys that run through my yard. I had a dead squirrel one day on my lawn, and I said, oh, I got to clean that up. Not a problem, God provides. Turkey vulture comes down, picks it up. Lunch, runs away. Had a black bear. I'm living in God's country. So, I'm loving it. I'm loving the life. I hope it never ends. I'm loving it.
Does your wife love it?
Ask her that. Well, she's had to make adjustments. She's moved her business up the Hudson Valley, but she's loving it. She likes her Subaru. She likes driving to work. Yes, sir.
When we were visiting yesterday, you were told.
That's a great question. Thanks for reminding me about that, Sandy. One of the drivers behind my decision was the way in which business and the practice of law has really taken a turn for the worst. And it's across the board. I was telling some stories yesterday about how when I first started practicing law, I was trained that you never would make any kind of a statement in a court submission unless you had 35 affidavits and 1 million documents substantiating that proposition. All right? That's just the way you did it. And I also learned that government lawyers when I first started practicing in the early 80s and later would never think of saying even the least amount of a misstatement. I mean, they were always, holier than holy. Because they represented the government, and that's the way the government was. Well, I recently had a case where government lawyers went into a federal judge and lied. They told the judge, they said, Vermont, our client, which is a Panamanian broker-dealer, had made $17 million in a pump-and-dump scheme, that they were pumping the stock up, they were pumping it down. $17 million, they made the money. They convinced the judge, because it was ex parte, only one side showed up, they caused the judge to freeze that account. I got a call on a Friday night from Panama saying, our accounts have just been frozen. Just been frozen. Well, over the weekend, Caledonia Bank was another one of the defendants in that case. Caledonia Bank went into liquidation over the weekend. No trial, no hearing, just on the say-so of the government, they liquidated the entire bank. Our client hadn't made $17 million. Our clients had acted as broker-dealer for other people that made money, and the accounts that were frozen were client accounts that had nothing to do with this activity. Froze all the accounts because of a lie. A lie. Right? That was a real driver. Yes, sir. Yeah.
From your observation and experience, what do you think is
the question is, for some reason, this kind gentleman thinks I'm wearing a funny hat and a purple robe or something. The question is, he wants me to opine on what I think the future of the Episcopal Church is. And I will tell you, the future of the Episcopal Church is right here in this room. You are the future of the Episcopal Church. The South is the future of the Episcopal Church. As we have continued secularization, I think that there's the North, urban areas have really succumbed to this secularization, I think, but places like Holy Communion is really where it's all about. You've got the future in your hands. Don't let that scare you. God's with you. It's all right. It's all right. Yes, sir. Does that answer your question? Yes. All right. I think those people are lost. They're lost without a compass. I look at the way that God has worked in my life, and I don't know how people that don't have a strong sense of faith can get through this life. Yeah, they may be successful. They may make a lot of money. They may feel good about themselves. We know about all these kind of people, right? Right? But how close are they to God? They don't care. Their God is something else. Idolatry, right? Idolatry. Let's put it on the table. But people of faith live a little differently. We live in accordance with God's will and God's plan, and we nurture that, and we pray on it, and we come together in community on it. And you heard what my students said, right? What's that word? You can't put that in your checking account. But that feeling of knowing that you're working towards God's will is something that I wouldn't trade for anything. Anything. Maybe a Ferrari. I've never driven a Ferrari. Red, please. Red, right? Red? Sorry. Anything else? Yes, sir. Yeah.
What was your concentration in law, and did it ever conflict with your religion?
That's a great question. My concentration law was corporate securities law, but I was a trial lawyer, enforcement lawyer. So I would try cases. I was a litigator, as some people might say, but specialized in the area of corporate and securities enforcement. All right. And you said, did I ever find that conflicted? Every day of the week. Every day of the week. In fact, I had this moniker when I was at Trinity Wall Street of being the Deacon of Wall Street. And Trinity had all sorts of PR stuff going. And so they dubbed me the Deacon of Wall Street and all that. And I have to tell you that I would have people come up to me after every service, especially after I preached, and they would say, Bob, how do you do it? How you come in here and being a deacon, and how do you walk out of here and how do you become a lawyer, a Wall Street lawyer? Ugh. How do you do it? And to that point, I found myself being very schizophrenic. And I had to take on a persona on Wall Street that was separate and apart from my persona inside the church. And I had to figure out who my true self really was. And after much prayer, after much discernment, I realized that my true self was the guy in the church, not the guy on the street. Hope that answers your question.
The deacon side of you?
Absolutely. The question is, what was the source of the conflict? Was I being asked to do things that were contrary to my sensibilities, to my religious beliefs? And the answer to that is yes. I mean, anyone who has been in a cutthroat kind of business where I was, Wall Street is it's not a day at the beach, right? As I tell my students when they hand in late papers, I said, yeah, you've got a nice professor that's going to who's going to frown. You do that on Wall Street and you're going to get fired, okay? There's no humanity there. And what I found is that I was serving people primarily so that they could make more money. And the people that I was representing didn't want to recognize the fact, oh, we did something wrong. No. You're a lawyer. You find some loophole to get us out of this. That's what lawyers are for. Forget about what I did. Just get me out of this mess. We used to represent some people who are in the news today. And that person would retain our firm and make demands, ridiculous demands, as to what he wanted to do. And when we were unsuccessful at it, we got fired and didn't get paid. Okay? So I'm very happy at Marist College. Yes, one back there. Yes, ma'am. Did everyone hear that question, or did you hear it enough? The question is, what do business people need to hear today? And I teach a course called Business 202, which is Business and Society in a Global Environment. And it's basically an ethics course. And we talk about stakeholder interests and things like that. And the challenge that business has today, especially when you're dealing about the shareholders' stakeholder analysis, is that shareholders, in fact, I had a hypothetical I was working on last week about a fracking company that decided that it wants to be a do-gooder and start giving money away to do-gooder organizations to greenwash their image, right? And the problem is that I can hear the shareholders sitting there and saying, well, we bought stock in your dirtball company because we knew you were a dirtball and because we wanted to make money in a dirtball way. So why are you going green on us now? And I always point to the Exxon Valdez. There is a nexus. There is a nexus where good ethics is good for business. All right? Exxon Valdez. Okay? You don't need they didn't need double hull tankers, right? They didn't need double hull tankers. They were too expensive, took away shareholder profits. They didn't need it. But had they done it, you wouldn't have had that terrible, horrific accident. And it just tarnished the image of the company for decades. Who wanted to see those little birds with all the oil on them, right? Which created a business opportunity for a soap manufacturer, right? But I always tell my students, find the nexus of something that's good, that's ethical, and it's also good for business. But find that nexus. Find that nexus. Does that answer your question? Does that help? Sort of? We'll have coffee later. We'll have coffee later. Okay. All right. Good.
Bob, thank you so much.
Yes, sir. Good. Thank you. Okay.